spiritual growth in people who maybe haven't considered that before. We have his picture up, so
Yeah.
Lucy also familiar,
talks about him.
like Sammy.
Yeah.
She knows his name and knows
Yeah.
what he looks like. And Charlie, he wants to feel close to his brother still a lot, so he'll have, he gets into some old costumes that Sammy had, and he'll always be like, "Did Sammy like Darth Maul?" I'm like, "Yeah, Sammy liked Darth Maul." So he'll, I think it spearheads kind of some of his interests.
I think God has shown me that I need him to get through this. Also, how strong our family is to get through this.
He's still here for us. Even in the darkest time of our life, he never left. He was always there for us.
Yeah. And he's shown us how we can use our pain to help other people.
It's impossible to walk the earth for any number of years without experiencing a lot of pain. But we can rely on Jesus because he has overcome this world.
Darkest nights, you are close like no other. I've known you as a father, I've known you as a friend, and I have lived in the goodness of God. And all my life you have been faithful. So good. With every breath that I am able, oh, I will sing of the goodness of God. Your goodness is running after, it's running after me. Your goodness is running after. It's running after me. With my life laid down, I'm surrendered now. I give you everything. Your goodness is running after. It's running after me. And all my life you have been faithful. And all my life you have been so good. With every breath that I am able, oh, I will sing of the goodness of God. Oh, I will sing of the goodness of God.
It seems so almost impossible to connect to the words of this song, and then you watch a story like Matt's, and you have to ask yourself the question, God, is your goodness really following me? Is it coming after me? And I think on a moment like this, we have to stop and just say, God, show yourself to be real to me. In my dark moments, in my painful moments, in the moments that are difficult, show me that you're real. Because we're convinced of this, that life is not easy at all. But that Jesus Christ is not a God that is there when everything's going great. He is one that is there and readily available and so close to us when things are difficult. And I think as us as a community, the more we begin to realize that, the closer we begin to connect to Jesus and realize the beauty that he is there in our brokenness and our difficult moments, right with us. And so I just want to pray today, because I know that we walk in this place, or maybe people are watching online, and everything seems to be fine on the outside. But on the inside, maybe things feel like they're crumbling. And so I want to pray today that we're reminded that Jesus is so real, right with us in the middle of this. Father, we ask now that that your goodness is coming after us. And Father, that you would make that clear, that you would show us that. God, thank you for loving us and pursuing us. Not some religious thing where we're trying to just always scrape and gravel to get to you. But God, you desperately want to get to us. And so I pray that becomes more real today, that we, on this journey to know you more, we discover that you're coming after us. In your name, Christ, we ask. Amen. Well, in our series called Tables, and it's been a beautiful series so far, starting Shauna had led us last week, and just talking about this reality that so much of the ministry of Jesus, as you look in Scripture, it finds itself to come around tables, around a meal, around a moment in community. And last week, just talking about this truth that Jesus had these beautiful moments at these tables with Matthew, who was Levi, he was a tax collector and despised, but people came to know him as such a person they didn't like, but Jesus invited him, and Matthew invited all of his friends to be there, and the Pharisees were so annoyed with Jesus, or the same with Zacchaeus and many others. It's amazing. I had met a guy this week, and he had asked me a question. He said, hey, could you pray for me? He said, I have a feeling that God may hear from you more than me. And I'm like, no, not even close, man. I feel like sometimes God does not want to hear from me, right? But I'm like, Jesus is always willing to hear from us. And this is what's so beautiful about Christ. Everybody is welcome at the table. Like some people that have their stuff together, everyone, every single one, right? I just am convinced of this. It'd be like inviting somebody to AA and say, you got to come sober though, right? Doesn't make sense at all. And Jesus invites all of us to this table. And today, this next table we're talking about is not just the reality that Jesus Christ is inviting all of us, but this table of Sabbath, this idea of needing rest. How many of you feel wore out a little bit, like you're tired? Just got to get real honest, right? That's 100% of us, it looks like. So, right? Most of us here feel that way. You know, we feel tired, we feel exhausted, we feel beat over, and there's something beautiful about feeling rested. And it's hard to get us to stop at moments to actually embrace rest. This is like a difficult thing to do. For me, it's sometimes unless I, fall off the stage or break my foot, I slow down. In fact, I've got to go see this orthopedic surgeon again. I had saw him, not for my foot, but it was for my Achilles, but I'm going to see him now for my neck. And I'm going to see him, but the first time I went to see him is because I busted my Achilles. And so I went to see him, and Maria took me in for the surgery. And I was kind of nervous, so they gave me something for that. And then he told me, he goes, I'm going to count backwards to 10, and you're going to be out. And I'm like, man, there's no way. Nothing can knock me out. And I'm like, 10, 9. And I'm like, out. But I remember when I woke up from that, maybe I don't really remember, I woke up from it. He came by to check on me, and Maria was there. And I don't remember saying this, but I told him, I'm like, man, I just want to tell you, this is like the best stuff in the world that you gave me, man. I feel so good. And I told him, I want everybody at our church to take this stuff that you gave me. Because I just feel awesome. And I feel like they would feel awesome. And they would feel so relaxed, And so he told me he's going to come back and check on me again when that wore off a little bit. But sometimes I think maybe we all could use a little bit of that stuff, right? Just to calm down, to relax. And it's such a difficult thing to do that. There's a beautiful book called The Elimination of Hurry, The Ruthless Elimination of Hurry by a guy named John Mark Comer. And Maria's been reading it, and I got on an Audible, and I actually thought I was guilty of this. I thought, I got to try to read this and keep up with her. And I thought, maybe I can do it on 1.5 or 2 speed. And it's all about not being in a hurry. So I'm like, and Audible gives you from 1.5 to 2 to 3.5 to 4. How can you even listen to something being spoken that quickly? But it's amazing. In the preface of the book, and John Ortberg was giving him kind of a lead-in for it, and just said that, man, there's so many things that are going on. We're in such a big hurry all the time, and he's referencing how the book really begins to bring us to the space that we're talking about today of what would it look like if we slowed down, if we could even Sabbath, that we're going to talk about a little bit. And he said that we grab our phones often. We grab our phones almost 2,600 times a day. Did you know that? You know we're almost doing this almost 2,600 times a day. And he said, can you imagine if we actually did that with Jesus, with God, just a few times more? The way that he could have an impact on our mind, on our heart. That one of the most valuable things that we have is the ability to be present in a moment. The ability to slow down and actually stop and be present with somebody you're talking to. To be present and honest even with yourself about the heartache and the hurts that you and I have right now that we're going through. To be present with the reality that maybe we're unwilling to ask for help, but we so desperately want to. We never do this. We never slow down to reflect. We're in just this big hurry so often. It's interesting, this idea of Sabbath, this amazing thing. It actually, a lot of it in Jewish custom would be this thing called Shabbat. They would do like a Friday night dinner, and they would actually do a Saturday brunch and a Saturday evening dinner, all in observation of Sabbath, of slowing down, of just stopping everything. And they would sit down and they would talk. They would have a course, a meal, and then they would sing. They would share stories. They would reflect on the day. They would have more food. Man, it would be like if we went to Honcho and then we went over to another union joint, and then we went across the street, and some of you might feel like this would be being a traitor, but we went to the Fed, right? And we had dessert over there, and we just did this, and it would be an amazing thing. And these cinnamon rolls look really good. Oh, they look so good. And just slowing down. But some of our meals, like at our tables, you ever notice, like when we sit down to eat, it's like, on your mark, get set, go! Everybody's just going 100 miles an hour, eating as fast as they can. And whoever's done, like, I'm done. And it's like frantic, and people are choking on their food, and, we're in this big hurry. And Shabbat is this opposite describing Sabbath. It's like slowing down. It's like not being in such a big hurry. And some of us eat dinner like that, and there's some of you that sit down and you enjoy your dinner. How many would actually take time, and be honest, because we all want to say this, you actually take time and you chew and you enjoy the food, you do that. There's like 3 of you, okay, so, and we get annoyed at you when you're at the table with us, want you to hurry up to get on to the next thing. I don't know why, right? Or sometimes you take a vacation, and you come back and you feel so rested and you're telling everybody about it. But most of us get back from vacation, what do we say? We need a vacation from our vacation, right? Well, what kind of vacation did we take? What the heck? Or you wake up. Are you the person that wakes up in the morning and you get up and everything feels great, and you've already texted 10 people and you're singing and you're ready to take on the world? Who are you morning people? Nobody. I just split the room. Sorry. Or you get up and you slept all night and you feel exhausted. Raise your hand. Many of us here, right? There's this reality that if we really get honest, we have to slow down just to admit the fact that we need to slow down. And this idea of Sabbath is something that Jesus is inviting us into, and it's so interesting because in that day, Sabbath, the idea became such a religious thing. People were working so hard, man, to honor this thing called Sabbath, to do this thing. And instead of being this relational, beautiful moment around a table where everybody could stop what they were doing for a moment, stop the work, stop the worry about the bills, stop the concern about what tomorrow would bring, and just be present with one another, and just love one another and care for one another and just be there. But it became this religious, crazy construct where they all felt constricted and couldn't do that. And it became rules and religious ideologies, things they would focus on instead of the relational part that Jesus desired. And we're going to discover that Jesus desires even greater for us to have this relationship with him. And he says in this verse, it's beautiful in Matthew chapter 11, he says, "Come to me, all who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest." He's saying this, and you can imagine the Pharisees are just off in the distance, scorning at him and so aggravated. Because they're saying that's what the Sabbath is for. If they follow the rules, if they do what they're supposed to do, if they work really hard, they'll be able to get rest. And Jesus says, I can tell you're wore out. I can see you have a burden that you can't resolve on your own. Come to me. He says specifically, come to me, and I will give you rest. And there's an intimacy to this. He's not just saying, come running to me, come after me. He's saying, come to me. As when somebody sees you and they ask you, is something wrong? Are you okay? They notice, and you can't hide it. He says, take my yoke upon you and learn from me. He says, do this with me. Don't do this by yourself. Do this with me. For I am gentle and humble in heart, and you will find rest. This is so profound. And you will find rest, not just for this outward scenario that you have in your life, whatever it might be, but you will find rest for your souls, for the inward. The part that's really at turmoil, the part that's waking you up in the middle of the night, the part that is asking the question, how can I get through tomorrow? How can we pay these bills? How can I do this? How am I going to fix this relationship? How am I going to, right? How? And Jesus begins to pull back the layers of humanity with these people. He's pulling the layers of humanity maybe back today in our own life, saying, I know you're focused on and worried for this concern. You're anxious over this. You have stress over this. But he's inviting you and I, even now, as much and as real as he was then, he is today, now, even in this moment, come to me, and I'll give you rest. And take my yoke upon me. This yoke, this idea was where they would put oxen together, and they'd have this contraption, really, and they'd put them two in there, and the older one would kind of guide the younger one, and the younger one would learn from him. And Jesus is saying, like, take this upon you. Look what he says. He says, and you will find rest for your souls, for my yoke is easy. Following me, being coupled with me, doing life with me, it's actually easy. It's a lot easier than doing it by yourself or the way you've been going about it, right? When people make the statement like, hey, how's that working out for you? And he says, and my burden is light. The burden you've been carrying, Jesus can help lift that. This burden that's holding you down and crushing you, he can pick that back up. He can do something remarkable. When he speaks these words into this culture, into this time of human history, he's saying something to them that is as relevant then as it is now. It is as potent then when they heard it to their ears as it is to you and I right now. Because we are so busy. We are so frantic. Like everybody asks, how are you? How's it going? Great, man. Super busy. I got this. I got that. And have you ever listened when somebody tells you what they're doing? You're like, I don't envy that at all, you know? And like the badge of honor is how busy we are and how frantic we are. We're like a community of caffeine addicts, you know? We're so busy. And I was at Starbucks a couple days ago, and I rarely go in there, but I was in there. And people are just like coming in. You can tell they're impatient. They're trying to get their order. Dude, one guy came in and he grabbed a cup and he like sniffed it. And then and I'm like, dude, I'm not here that much, but there's labels. Read them, you know? Quit sniffing everybody's drink. And he's just in this big hurry. He's like going, and there's this franticness, and everybody just feels frantic. And Jesus is saying, I see that. That's crazy. I didn't design you to live your life this way. And he's not even condemning them because he can tell they already feel condemned under the weight of this anxiety, of the burdens, of the depression, of the hurt, of the pressures. He can feel it. It's palpable in the room, in the air with them. And he's saying, I want you to just come to me. And I really want to give you, I can tell you're exhausted and you need respite. I want to give you respite. I want to give you real rest. And I want you to trust that I'm gentle and I am humble. And if you yoke up, if you connect with me, if you couple with me, if you walk with me, if you let me have the privilege of walking with you, it's going to be easier than what you've been going through. The burden is going to get lighter than what it's ever been. Will you follow me? And I can even give you rest for your souls. And this is profound, and the people hear this, but the religious rulers of the day are super frustrated about this. And look what happens in this scenario. Just a few verses later, another chapter into the story of Matthew says that that time Jesus went through the grain fields on the Sabbath, which you weren't supposed to do. His disciples were hungry and began to pick some heads of grain and eat them. And when the Pharisees saw this, again, because they weren't supposed to be working, but they're hungry, right? They have a need, but they weren't supposed to meet it. Eat them. When the Pharisees saw this, he said, look, your disciples, what they're doing, it's unlawful on the Sabbath. And Jesus answered, haven't you read what David did when he and his companions were hungry? This is interesting when he says, haven't you read? Because they're the teachers of the law. Of course they've read and they have memorized and they know and they could recite it backwards. They knew this. But Jesus brings up, you know what's interesting? Have you ever read this part right here when David did this and he went in? And look what it says. He says, he entered the house of God, and he and his companions ate the consecrated bread, which was not lawful for them to do, but only for the priest. Or haven't you read in the law that the priest on the Sabbath duty in the temple desecrate the Sabbath and yet are innocent. He says, I tell you something greater than the temple is here. If you had known what these words mean, I desire mercy, not sacrifice, you would not have condemned the innocent, for the Son of Man is the Lord of the Sabbath. And to explain the latter part of that, he's saying, don't you understand? He's like, even the priests that are supposed to be in there doing this are eating the bread, but it's okay for them to do it, but not for my own disciples. He's like, and don't you know something's even greater here versus this religious context that you have, this temple? Jesus is saying, I am here, and he's saying, I'm actually Lord of the Sabbath. That's why he was telling people, come to me, follow me, trust me. Why don't you just come to me and I'll actually give you rest? Jesus is saying something super profound in the face of the religious leaders. He's saying something super profound in the face of our busy, hectic, out of control, intense, uptight, anxious, worried about everything culture. He's saying, I can be your Sabbath. I can be your rest. And look at Mark says it this way. Mark captures the same moment as Matthew did. And Mark says that he witnessed Jesus saying this. Then he had said to them, the Sabbath was made for man, not man for the Sabbath. The religious rulers had it all wrong. See, often we come in here and we think, I got to do this for God, and I got to be this way, and I got to get everything together, and I got to do all this, and I don't have a right to sit at the table and participate, or I'm not even worthy of that, maybe you feel, or my burden's too much to carry to whatever it is, right? And Jesus knows this. He loves us and absolutely understands us about us. And Mark captures this, and Jesus is saying, the Sabbath was actually made for you and made for me. I struggle with this so bad, man. I'm a busybody, and I got to go, and I got to do, and I got to perform, and Jesus is saying, chill out. I actually made this for you, that you could find rest, beautiful rest, that you could become my disciple, that you could actually learn the gentleness and humility in my heart that could transform your heart, that you would find rest for your soul the way that Jesus had with his own, right? Like he's saying this is something so profound. So the Son of Man is even the Lord of Sabbath. I just want to break this down for a moment and then have a friend come up and share a little story about how he experienced real rest in Jesus and trusting when he had to stop and slow down. But this word Shabbat, it's kind of a cool word, isn't it? It's a Hebrew word kind of breaking the Sabbath down. Shabbat means to stop the hard work, to cease, to quit, to slow down. And this is so hard for us to do, is it not? Like just stop. And this other word, nuach, it means to dwell or settle or be present. And when they would sit at the table and have Shabbat, have this meal together, they do these meals Friday night and Saturday at brunch and Saturday evening. They would Shabbat, they would stop. And they would nuach, they would become present together. They would be present with one another. Isn't it amazing to be present? Have you ever been talking with somebody and they're not really present? You're talking with them, they're like, text. Have you ever wanted to grab their phone and just chuck it? I dare you to do that next time. To see how that bodes in your relationship with whoever it is. Maybe it'll ruin it. Maybe that's what you need. No, I don't know. I hope I don't give bad advice here. I probably am. But to nuach, to actually be present. When somebody says, did you hear what I just said? And you really didn't. You may have heard, but you didn't hear with your heart. You may have heard with your ears and got the logical part of what they shared, but you didn't feel, you didn't empathize, you didn't go deeper with them at all. And to nuach, this is a big deal. And Jesus is saying, this is how you are designed. And often, this idea that we're working for rest. We work so hard, right? Work hard, play hard. Like we got to work for rest. We're going to work and do this. And I mean, I hear these stories often. People work their whole life. They save for retirement, man. They got their dream idea. And then something happens and they never enjoy it. Or they're working so hard and they say, someday I'm going to do this. And someday this is going to happen. I'm striving and I'm working so hard for this moment and they don't do it. Or the person with the amazing vehicle. You ever seen the person that's got like the car? This is you. I love you. I'm not even trying to be insulting because I don't have an awesome car or anything. But they got this amazing car. And you're like, man, if I had that car, I'd be flooring it around town and hanging out top down. And you're like, how often do you take that out? And they're like, a couple times a year. And that's what they literally mean. 2 times a year, you know. and that's it. And the car's up on blocks, and it's got a cover, and it's got its own spot, and a third extra stall that they put an extra 25 grand of their home to build, and it's there, and it's safe, and it's like, man, how does she drive? And what they really should say is, I have no idea. We don't drive it. Why do you have a car? Right? But they've worked so hard for this idea of enjoyment, of rest, and it never really fully comes to fruition. And we work so hard, like we need rest, and we're working so hard. Maybe you're a recovering addict, and you're working so hard to get away from that addiction, and it's pulling at you, and you just can't. You're working so hard to find rest and peace in a relationship that you have, and you're just exhausted with it. You're exhausted from working on this relationship. You are working so hard for this idea of rest, and the pressure, the burdens Jesus is speaking of maybe a medical diagnosis, or bills that don't stop, or just a lack of clarity of your future, what you're holding on to, and you're just struggling so bad. And I talk to so many each week, and as we share together as a community, we have these struggles, and they're so hard. And rest is like it's absent in the conversation. It seems like a concept that we could not even experience if we tried to. And Jesus is saying, you desperately need to come to me. You so desperately need rest. You so desperately need this. And there's something beautiful that if we can actually Shabbat, if we can cease, if we can stop with our man-made work and effort and energy to achieve this rest, if we can just stop. And it seems so counterintuitive, right? It's flipping our paradigm. No, you got to work more. You got to strive more. You got to push more. You got to perform more. You got to do more. Do. We're not human doings. We're human beings. We need to be present. We need to nuak. And be present in this moment. And the idea is work from rest, not work for rest. But what if our lives worked from rest? See, from the Sabbath, Jesus completes creation. He reflects, he rests, he becomes rejuvenated. He's inviting us in rest. So many beautiful things happen. Our soul can reflect, it can recalibrate, it can renew, it rejuvenates. All these things it does this, that we can actually work from rest. And it's just amazing just to stop and consider this. Some of the most profound moments in the life of Jesus take place when he's resting. He'll go away and he'll reflect with the Father. He'll pray with the Father. He'll rest. And then he'll go out and do work. Even the concept, even think about this, that when Jesus gets ready to start ministry, before he had done any work, the Father looks down and says, that's my Son in whom I'm well pleased. Like he hasn't done anything yet. But there's this beautiful solace, this moment before Jesus goes out. He spends time in the garden. He spends time with his Father, that he rests. And when is the last time we honestly were like nuak? We were actually present with Jesus. We were present with our problems before him, our hurts before him, whatever we're struggling with before him. And we're just saying, I can't carry this burden. I can't do this anymore. I got to stop and cease and be present before you. Because here's what's so beautiful. Jesus works for us on our behalf and advocates with us and for us while we rest. Isn't that crazy to think while we're doing nothing, Jesus is doing something beautiful? While we just breathe in, he's going to be breathing out something new and amazing and new mercy and new creation from our life. And that's so counterintuitive for us to even consider and think about. And I want to bring up my friend David to share about this in a real practical way of somebody that's always been focused and, figures things out. And I'm going to have him bring over a couple stools just so we can chat for a minute and about this, because you are like a strategist. You want to know the plan. You love an idea, but you want to know how we're going to accomplish it and who's going to do what and how does it work. And for me to say something like that to you, just stop and chill out and sit still and it'll all work out. You look at me and you think you're an idiot. Like that's not going to work. And most of us feel that way, right? We really do. But the scripture, come to me, all who are weary and burdened. And you hit a spot where you really felt wore out. And you felt like you had a burden all of a sudden that you couldn't strategize your way through. And so I'd love for you just to kind of share a little bit about, who you are and that part of the story that you've entered into.
Stop me if I go too far first.
Yeah.
But yeah, I've always been someone who's trying to achieve, what's next? How can I get more done? And God had been speaking to me all over that I needed to stop and rest. I see a counselor, and he told me that he started talking to me about taking a Sabbath, and it wasn't on the table for us. My wife is like me. We schedule every extra moment of our day, and we were just always busy, always going. There's no time for rest. So, and then into July, I went into liver failure, and last time you had me up here, I started crying. So hopefully I can stop that from happening this
You're in
time.
good company with me. I'm always crying about something. So.
But I went into liver failure into July, and I spent the next 6 weeks on and off in the hospital. I was bright yellow. Some of you saw me there in that season. And we're a football family. So during Chiefs season, I'm sure there's Chiefs families in here, but it's 5 days a week, right after school till bedtime, no time for dinner. We were selling our house. I had been working for a new business for 4 months.
Yeah.
And so it was not a good time for me to be in the hospital for 6 weeks. So
You had to stop.
I didn't have a choice.
You didn't have a choice. Yeah, you didn't have a choice at all. And I know you, and so everything inside you is like, I'm just going to figure this out. And I know you were already even in the moment when I had talked with you. You were like,
I had my wife bring my computer to the hospital so that I could do work while I was in the hospital.
Yeah.
It never worked out, but.
Yeah, I know it didn't work out. But that's such a picture of us not even recognizing what Jesus is saying you look wore out and you seem to be carrying a burden so big. And I remember we were at Home Depot and you were getting stuff, and I remember seeing you, and you did. Your color was so different and changed, and you had this sense of optimism, but I could feel it in you. You had a burden that was pretty big that you were carrying, man. And tell us about this spot when Jesus finally invites you to stop or forces you to stop.
Yeah, when we stopped and we couldn't do it on our own. We couldn't meet the moving deadlines. I couldn't work. Our community came out in full force. You know, Jesus brought so many people to us. My family was fed.
Yeah.
Here it is.
Yeah, you're okay, man.
My family was fed by all of you, and I never missed a paycheck at work.
Yeah.
The men of our church came out with trucks upon trucks to move all of our stuff.
Yeah.
I can't even name names because I'd miss so many of them. But people watched our kids, took them to football for us. I mean, every need we had so that Leah could spend time with me.
Yeah.
It was all met.
David is such a, yeah. For those that know you closely, you're a brilliant individual. You are a strategist in the truest sense. And I remember seeing you at Home Depot, and my heart hurt because I could feel that burden. And I've watched the story of faith that you and Leah have walked through, and so many that you had to Shabbat, you had to cease and stop and settle. But I've watched this transformation, this beautiful thing in your heart, this faith that begins to exuberate out of you that's new. I've not seen it the way I see it now, because Jesus provided literally a new liver for you, people around you, a paycheck for you, meals for you, and he really gave you rest and the ability to trust him, and it's not always easy to trust. And so I want, because I can say it, and you guys can say, yeah, it's a great idea, but I want you to hear it and feel it in real life. And what would you tell to us about when people are hearing this nudge from God to slow down, to be present, to rest, to trust him? Because really it's what it is. It's to trust him more. What would you tell them?
Just that. I mean, it's all real. I'm the guy that won't stop. And when we stopped, he provided. And he will provide, Jehovah Jireh.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Dude, I love you, buddy. I'm thankful that you came out and shared that with us. And I wanted you to hear that from him, to be reminded that Jesus actually goes to work when we have to stop. and that he's always working upstream in our life. And so I appreciate you getting up here. And you didn't cry as much as you said you were going to. Yeah. Oh, we love you, buddy. Thank you, man. God bless you. I think today there's a table with your name on it. There's an invitation for you to, believe it or not, lean back at this table. That Jesus is inviting you. He's saying, number one, everybody's welcome. Well, I got to get this together, and I got to do this, and you let Jesus deal with them. You forget about the voices in your heart and your head that are saying no. You forget about voices that may have said something rude or hurtful to you. A religiosity, a pretense that says you don't belong here. Jesus says that's all garbage and untruth. You belong here. And then he's asking us to lean back. He's asking us to take a breath. And just to let out. He's saying, just unload it to me. Come to me, all that are weary. Are you wore out? Come to me that have a great burden and you cannot carry. Do you have something that you just can't carry anymore and you've not been honest with yourself or others about it? Be honest about it. He says, and take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and humble in heart. He says, and I will even give you rest for your souls. He says, come on now. It's easier. It's a lesser burden. There's beauty at this table. And so I just want to pray for us now as Davey leads us into this final moment. This idea of Shabbat. Are we like this, frantic at the table? Or can we actually lean back with great confidence? Jesus is inviting us to a different kind of life, a different rhythm, where he is this great shepherd of our souls. He provides rest in a way we never could. In a culture that is so busy, he is inviting us to just be. And so I just want to pray for us in this moment. And as you listen to the words of the song, that you could find yourself in a posture not like this, but in a posture that would allow you to lean back and let Jesus go to work in your life as he did David's. Because he wants to go to work in our life on our behalf. Father, we pray right now. We are a busy culture. We are a busy community, and it's become a badge of honor. God, in the middle of it, we are missing being present with you, Father. Your joy and your mercy and your love that you want to radiate in our lives. Your provision, God, that you want to give to us. Wisdom that you want to provide to us. God, you want to meet our needs in a way that we never could. And so I just pray that we slow down in this moment. God, that we lean back and we listen to your voice. You are the great shepherd. And God, that we might become familiar with your voice, that we might become so familiar that we become bold and trust and follow your voice into the unknown. Because you are Jehovah Jireh. You are the great provider. You are the lover of our soul. Father, I pray that we become a community that is missional, that is focused, all those things, that's great. But we are a community that can lean back, put our head on the pillow at night, and trust, Jesus, that you are with us through everything. May you bless, Father. May we sit at the table with you in your name. Amen.
Oh, you will never leave, and your love sustaining me. Before I even knew what love was, you brought me here to rest and given me space to breathe. So I'll stay until it sinks in. And I will lean back into the loving arms of a beautiful Father. Oh, breathe deep and know that He is good. He's a love like no other. And you will never leave. Your love sustaining me. Before I even knew what love was, so you brought me here. You brought me here to rest and given me space to breathe. So I will stay until it sinks in. I lean back, and I will lean back into the loving arms of a beautiful Father. Oh, and breathe deep and know that He is good. He's a love like no other. Hey. He's a love like no And now I can see your love is better than all the others that I've seen. And I'm breathing deep, all of your goodness, your loving kindness to me. And now I can see your love is better than all the others that I breathe deep and know that He is good. He's a love like no other. He's better, He's better. I thought I knew what love was. I thought I knew what love was. I thought I knew what love was. But He's better, He's better. I thought I knew what love was. I thought I knew what love was. I thought I knew what love was. But He's better, He's better. I thought I knew what love was. I thought I knew what love was. I thought I knew what love was. But He's better, He's better. I thought I knew what love was. I thought I knew what love was. I thought I knew what love was. But He's better, He's better. Yeah, He's better, He's better. Oh, He's better, He's better. Yeah, He's better, He's better. I lean back into Your loving arms of a beautiful Father. I breathe deep, oh, I'll breathe deep and know that He is good. He's a love like no other. So I lean back, oh, and I lean back into Your loving arms of a beautiful Father. Oh yeah, breathe deep and know that He is good. He's a love like no
I love you, man. There's a beautiful invitation to follow Jesus. And He is always extending this hand. He's saying, come to me. He says, I know you're wore out. I know you're nervous. I know you have a burden. He's like, but come to me and I'll give you rest. I'll even give it to your soul. And He takes us places and He shows us things that we could never even imagine. He's amazing. And I just want to keep encouraging you. Don't lean into Kensington. Lean into Jesus. He's better than you could ever imagine. I promise. We love you. God bless you. Davey, we love you so much. Thank you for following Jesus in a beautiful way. God bless you guys. We love you. Give Davey a hug. Encourage him. God bless you all. Take care.